What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. The story begins with the narrator, an unnamed writer, attending a lecture on a college campus. She is only in town coincidentally, visiting a very dear old friend who is undergoing specialized treatment for a serious form of cancer. Staying at an Airbnb hosted by a tidy, retired librarian, a widow whose cat, promised in the listing, has recently died, the narrator finds a flyer for the talk. The speaker is a well-known author and professor, stark featured with white hair and a piercing gaze, whose recent article on the impending collapse of civilization due to climate change, nuclear threat, technological overreach, and general human folly had been widely read. The narrator recognizes him. He is her ex. The lecture is introduced by a glamorous academic woman, whom the narrator observes with detached analysis. The speaker, despite an affectation of modesty, delivers a grim, dispassionate assessment of the planet's future. He reiterates the points from his article. Humankind lacks the collective will to avert catastrophe, driven by greed, denial, and self-delusion, particularly criticizing the fossil fuel industry and political enablers. He speaks of the dangers of WMDs in the wrong hands, the unstoppable ecological disaster dooming the animal kingdom, the threats of cyber and bioterrorism, pandemics, the rise of far-right regimes, and the insidious power of tech corporations and surveillance capitalism. His tone is calm, controlled, masking deep emotion, only showing a flicker when mentioning the animals. He takes no questions, seemingly convinced of the irrefutable nature of his facts, and perhaps fearing thoughtless remarks from the audience. He criticizes the societal embrace of self-care and mindfulness, arguing they promote detachment when what is needed is fanatical obsession with impending doom. He then raises a new unsettling point not covered in his article: the morality of bringing children into such a bleak potential future. He suggests people should reconsider having families, turning attention instead to the suffering already present in the world. His final message is a call to learn forgiveness, atone for harm done, love one another, and learn to say goodbye. The audience reacts with confusion and subdued discussion as they leave. Some find him arrogant or boring. Others feel he was entirely right, while one furiously questions the point of such a hopeless message. The narrator overhears various comments, including an elderly man joking about the speaker's repetitive "it's over" refrain. Walking away, she notices a man whistling "My Favorite Things." Needing a drink, she finds a small cafe. There, she overhears a painful conversation between a father and daughter after the mother's unveiling ceremony. The daughter desperately seeks acknowledgement for the emotional toll caregiving took on her, while the father remains focused on the deceased mother's suffering. Back at the Airbnb, the host reveals she also attended the lecture and strongly disliked the speaker's hopeless tone, arguing one cannot expect people to love and care for each other after stripping away all hope. She dismisses his idea about not having children as dystopian. When the narrator mentions the whistling man, the host finds it hilarious and sings the entire song. Alone, the narrator picks up a paperback thriller left for guests. It details a man plotting to kill his mean wife, his plans shifting when she gets pregnant and has an abortion, giving him a perfect motive for faking her suicide. Before he can act, she runs off with another man, sending him into a rage where he murders a prostitute and her pimp. The killer, despite his brutality, yearns for culture and self-improvement. The narrator finds this aspect poignant, but has no interest in finishing the mystery. The next morning, she finds her host crying, which the host quickly dismisses as merely thinking. Later, the narrator receives an email from her ex, acknowledging he saw her, thanking her for coming, and expressing a hesitant wish they could have connected, while respecting her silence. The narrator reflects that what truly pained her was seeing how much older he looked. The narrative then shifts focus to the friend battling cancer. Miraculously, the treatments, including an experimental one, succeed beyond expectations. The friend is technically cured, or as she puts it, not going to die just yet. However, she swings between euphoria and depression, finding survival almost anticlimactic after preparing for death. She recalls initially wanting to refuse treatment, foreseeing a painful, likely futile struggle. Only her daughter had respected this initial wish, responding coolly, "It's your choice." A reaction that deeply wounded the friend, given their historically fraught relationship. The friend details the long-standing difficulties with her daughter. Born after a troubled pregnancy, the daughter seemed alien to her mother from a young age, displaying a lack of affection and difficult behaviors. The friend sometimes jokingly called her a changeling and believed things might have been better if she'd had a son, or at least another child, to prove the maternal failure wasn't entirely hers. The father, a brief high school flame rekindled before he went to war, was uninvolved by mutual agreement after the friend became pregnant from breakup sex. He later died tragically, attempting a rescue from a burning house where it turned out no one was inside. The daughter, never having known him, constructed an idealized, heroic image, blaming her mother for keeping them apart and pouring out her resentment in secret letters found later. She deeply resented growing up as a single-parent child in her doty grandparents' home, feeling like an outsider and treating her mother's subsequent boyfriends rudely. Her prize-winning adolescent poem, depicting herself as an emotional boat person and her family as enemies, further strained relations. Though the daughter eventually achieved success and independence, traveling extensively for her high-powered job advising hospitality businesses, and relations thawed somewhat after her grandparents' deaths, true reconciliation never occurred. They remained distant, largely unaware of the details of each other's current lives. The friend remained deeply hurt by the daughter's "It's your choice" response to her life-threatening illness. During the narrator's hospital visit, the friend, though frail and changed by treatment, thin, pale, hairless, retains her characteristic vigor and directs the conversation, reminiscing about their shared past working at a literary journal and discussing mutual acquaintances. They are interrupted by the friend's handsome oncologist, with whom she shares a brief, flirtatious exchange. After the doctor leaves, the friend tires suddenly, but asks the narrator to stay. She snaps at a nurse, later dismissing her as someone she dislikes. As the narrator leaves, the friend expresses relief that the visit happened, having specifically kept other visitors away. She rolls her eyes when the narrator mentions attending her ex's talk. The narrator then reflects on various anecdotes and observations. She thinks about a published story based on a real-life acquaintance, a professor who had an affair with a student who turned out to be the son of his former lover, leading to the professor's suicide. She contrasts this with the fictionalized version where the student was an unknown daughter, finding the real story more compelling but understanding the ethical concerns around fictionalizing real lives. She recalls the documentary Jesus, You Know, where ordinary Catholics pray aloud in empty churches, revealing deep loneliness and mundane or disturbing concerns, reinforcing the idea that everyone is undergoing a struggle. She describes encounters at her gym with a woman she's seen for years. Initially pretty and confident, the woman now struggles with middle-aged weight gain and the loss of her looks, expressing bitterness, frustration with dieting, and shame about her body, avoiding mirrors and public exposure. She recounts the story of a once very beautiful elderly woman, discussing the profound social shift experienced when beauty fades, the loss of attention, admiration, and privilege, leading to feelings of invisibility, paranoia, and mourning for her lost self, even impacting her marriage. The gym woman also shares how male art teachers' unwanted advances and potentially insincere praise undermined her confidence, contributing to her abandoning painting. The narrator contemplates women's stories, often sad ones. She presents the story of woman A, who dreamed of a comfortable, cultured old age with a kind, dignified companion, but now faces a solitary reality, wondering where that imagined old man went. Then, woman B's story from Umbria, encountering a frail old man daily while running, who one day, aroused by her bare arms, gropes her lustfully, revealing the persistent, uncontrollable force of desire even in decay. She reflects on Ingeborg Bachmann's writings about the difficulties between men and women, the dismissal of women's fiction, and the story of Dora Carrington's obsessive, tragic love for the gay Lytton Strachey. The narrative returns to the friend, whose cancer has returned aggressively. The treatments have failed. Back in the hospital, the friend is angry, primarily at herself for enduring the painful, ultimately futile treatments fueled by false hope. Facing a prognosis of months, maybe a year, she is terrified of dying in excruciating pain like her father, whose body fought long after his mind was gone. She wants a good death, peaceful and dignified, but rejects reading philosophical texts or writing about her experience, feeling weary of words. She recounts a visit from an old colleague recently fired amidst #MeToo allegations, who broke down confessing suicidal thoughts, violating her rule against sniveling. She grapples with how to inform people and manage final visits, finding the idea of a Facebook announcement bizarre. As pink snow falls outside her window, she observes, "Well, I've lived to see that." Staying again at the librarian's Airbnb, the narrator meets the new rescue cat, Booger. That night she reads more of the thriller. The killer gets drawn into disco dancing, finds unexpected happiness and talent, but tendinitis forces him to stop, leading to resentment, obsession with John Travolta, whose supportive mother contrasts with his own abusive one, and further murders. Booger the cat then visits the narrator, recounting his life story, from a neglectful convenience store, surviving a fire, being tormented by boys and thrown in a dumpster, to his rescue and adoption by the loving host. A narrator describes visiting her elderly neighbor, an 86-year-old widow living alone who has become increasingly paranoid, especially about phone scams targeting the elderly. Her son visits regularly, but struggles with her stubborn refusal to leave her apartment or accept more help. The narrator had agreed to check on the neighbor occasionally, partly out of a desire to do good during a low point in her own life. The visits become strained. The neighbor complains constantly about the building and the state of the world, her politics having shifted dramatically towards angry conservatism, seemingly fueled by Fox News. She shows no interest in the narrator and rants without engaging, making the narrator feel superfluous and sometimes even afraid. While the narrator is away traveling, the neighbor's son dies suddenly. Relatives move the old woman away, and the narrator, relieved but ashamed, never follows up. She recalls Simone Weil's definition of loving one's neighbor, asking, "What are you going through? Quel est ton tourment?" The friend, now out of the hospital but clearly declining, meets the narrator at a bar they frequented in their youth. She reveals she has obtained a euthanasia drug. She doesn't want help administering it, but she needs someone to be with her during her final weeks or months in a quiet, rented place away from home. She explains she wants to prepare peacefully, letting go of attachments, but cannot face it entirely alone. Her two closest friends refused, unable to condone suicide, and wanting her to keep fighting. The friend criticizes the societal pressure to view cancer as a heroic battle and the cliches surrounding terminal illness. She sees choosing her death as her way of fighting back, of maintaining control. She couldn't ask her daughter due to their toxic relationship and the daughter being her heir. She asks the narrator, reminding her, incorrectly based on a fabricated memory, of a college debate where the narrator supposedly argued passionately for the right to die. The narrator, stunned by the false memory and the weight of the request, cannot answer immediately. The friend understands and says she'll call after returning home. The friend finds a suitable Airbnb house in coastal New England, reminiscent of her childhood home and equipped for aging needs. They plan to go there for potentially a month, though the timing is uncertain. The friend feels she'll know when it's time. She insists on secrecy to avoid interference and advises the narrator to feign ignorance about the plan and the drug for her own protection. The narrator, despite deep misgivings and moments of wanting to back out, agrees, moved by the thought that she would want the same help in that situation. The friend is immensely relieved. They arrive at the rented house, finding it comfortable and well-prepared, though dominated by a large, slightly unsettling portrait of a woman resembling Madame X. The friend feels a connection to the house. The narrator grapples with the surreal situation, doubting the plan will unfold smoothly, suspecting her friend might not go through with it, yet troubled by her own resistance to the reality. She considers keeping a journal, but quickly abandons the idea. Feeling language inevitably falsifies profound experiences, and finding the act of writing unhelpful. A near disaster occurs. The friend realizes she forgot the lethal pills back home. Panicked, she insists they drive back immediately to retrieve them. They do, returning late that night. Later, the narrator gently suggests the oversight might indicate conflict, but the friend angrily refutes this, blaming chemo brain and citing examples of its cognitive effects. Life in the rented house takes on a strange rhythm. They notice the ex's upcoming conference nearby. The friend reiterates her dislike for him. The narrator doesn't reveal she has confided in him. Reading becomes difficult for the friend, finding even favorite books or music irritating or too sad. They watch profoundly moving films like Make Way for Tomorrow and laugh hysterically at Buster Keaton comedies, clinging to each other. The narrator goes to a local gym, but a breakdown during a session with an earnest young trainer makes her abandon exercise. She confesses meeting her ex to her friend, who is surprisingly unbothered. Time feels distorted. The friend reminisces about her happy childhood, contrasting it with her daughter's experience and her own failures as a parent, including the painful memory of the daughter's teenage betrayal with a boyfriend, something she still cannot forgive. They grow closer, developing a deep, intuitive intimacy. The portrait in the living room seems to soften, becoming a comforting presence, a shrine. They read fairy tales aloud, finding solace in their deep truths. Physical closeness increases, nestling on the sofa, holding hands, a shared kiss followed by a joke. The friend expresses guilt for leaving the narrator behind. Another crisis. While the narrator is out grocery shopping, an emotionally fraught task. Shadowed by the friend's lack of appetite and the narrator's own shame-inducing hunger, the friend decides to take a hot bath, falls asleep waiting for the tub to fill, and causes a significant flood. The narrator returns to find her friend distraught and shivering amidst the watery mess. The friend is devastated, seeing it as a humiliating farce, a punishment for her fantasy of a peaceful, controlled death. She rails against the unfairness, feeling utterly unhappy and hating herself. The narrator comforts her while dealing with the practicalities of contacting the hosts and arranging cleanup. They leave the damaged house and move into the friend's city apartment. The friend is glad to be home, but retreats further, refusing to go out, troubled by poor balance and a desire to turn inward. Their verbal communication dwindles, replaced by unspoken understanding. The narrator takes over all chores, but finds her efforts often rebuffed due to the friend's heightened sensitivities. She continues her solitary, tearful visits to the nearby park. She reflects on the intensity of their bond, comparing it to falling in love or surviving a disaster. She learns that a woman she briefly worked for years ago, glamorous, researching a biography, who had an affair with Faulkner, recently committed suicide by jumping from her penthouse. In the park, she sees her friend briefly at her apartment window. Later, she has a final, bitter phone argument with her ex, who calls her bond with the friend a folie à deux and washes his hands of the situation when she expresses fear about lying to the authorities after the friend's death. Alone on the park bench, overwhelmed by fear and the impending loss, she reflects on the paradoxical happiness within the sadness, the inadequacy of language, the persistence of love and compassion, and the ultimate insignificance of failure in the face of such profound experience. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.